we go now.
If you are ready to live a life of abundance, if you are ready to best your best, then come to the edge. Because if you are not living your life on the edge, you are taking up far too much room.
Here we go now.
Welcome back to The Edge. I'm your host, Eric Brown, and with me, Mr. Mike Jones.
Hey man, so happy to be back. Know that y'all benefiting from these past episodes, man. So stay strapped in. We got some smoking hot stuff for you today.
Yeah, all y'all are going to just want to reach up and buckle in because it's about to go down, y'all, for sure. So, Mike, recently I had a work colleague come up to me and tell me about a situation that they had with another colleague.
Okay.
And during the conversation, the person told me that, the person made them feel a certain way based on some of the stuff that they were saying and doing. And once I heard the whole story, my coaching to her was to actually go talk to that individual about it. And she told me, I think that would be just going too far.
Yeah. And I've heard this going too far thing before many times in my career. And I've always asked the question, and you have got to listen today with the intent to be influenced. Because this is a question that in some respects of your life that you likely need to ask yourself. So here's my question. How do you know what it means to go too far if you've never gone too far? Most of the things that we consider too far are the things that are outside of our comfort zone. So an example of Eric's situation at work would be, how can that individual know what it means to go too far in confronting or defending themselves unless they've gone too far? They don't even know what going too far is. Whenever you walk out on the edge, it sometimes feels like you've gone too far because it gets scary out on the edge. And for every last one of us, there is an edge in our lives, in our relationships. The first thing I believe, as I have said to Eric, that he needed to say to this young woman is, first of all, confrontation is not the enemy to enthusiasm. When you are in a situation in game, it's happening right now in the moment where you are feeling uncomfortable or that somebody is pushing into your space beyond your boundaries that you don't want somebody. It is in that moment that you need to go too far in the context of this conversation if that is something that is uncomfortable for you, because it is your responsibility in that moment to check that person. Because if you don't, then they are going to feel that that's okay. So my question to you is, where in your life have you drawn a line that you believe beyond that line is going too far? Because you will never truly know what it means to go too far until you've gone too far. Now, there are so many different contexts to address this going too far thing, because I've often asked the question of colleagues, how do you know what it means to go too far in being more organized if you've never gone too far? You don't even know what that means in the context of you being disorganized or you allowing people to take advantage of you. How do you know what it means to go too far unless you've gone too far? Now, individuals that I know are very analyticals, that are perfectionistic, that always got to be buttoned up and they're always too serious. How do you know what it means to go too far, to get out of that comfort zone and go and have some fun, to let your hair down? I know right now that analyticals are feeling on the edge, just me talking about this right now. But how do you know what it means to go too far if you've never gone too far? When you get out on the edge, that is absolutely going to create a conversation with you that maybe you feel like this is going too far, I would encourage you to go too far. In the context of being more patient with people, I would encourage you to go too far in the context of creating more intimacy in your romantic relationships. I would encourage you to go too far when it comes to catching people doing things right. I would encourage you to go too far as it relates to getting healthier and feeling more healthy and doing more healthy things for yourself. Go too far. And when you have understood and found what it means to go too far, I would encourage you to go even further.
So, Mike, in a prior episode, you talked about right fighting.
Yeah.
So, how do you know whether you should be defending yourself or you're in a right fighting with someone in the context of going too far?
Yeah, well, Eric, there's got to be this awareness that there are perception and interpretations that we all have, even looking at the exact same things at times. However, in order for me to truly know if I am going too far, I've got to understand that my truth is not always the truth. So if I am right fighting to defend something that I truly know is just my interpretation or my perception of something, we have got to have a conversation and decide what our outcome is. Yep, it's going to keep coming up, y'all. When we both agree on an outcome, the right fighting can stop. But I do not need to fight with you to prove that I am right, because I have a right to my opinions, my interpretations, and my perceptions, and so do you. There is no need for us to fight to defend our truth. Your truth is your truth, and my truth is my truth. If we are working together to accomplish something, we are going to have to make an agreement to something in order for us to move forward. That is the only way that we can truly move forward in a healthy, synergistic way, is to make an agreement. So, my wife and I have differences of opinion. There is no need for me to make her wrong for me to be right. In the context of this conversation, when we get an agreement to what the two of us are focused on, we can work together to go too far. Sometimes taking a step back may mean that you're going too far. It depends on how you have been with people up until now. Taking a step back, sitting your butt down somewhere, closing your lips and being quiet and listening more may be going too far for you, because that's not normally who you are. Whatever going too far is for you, you can identify that in this present moment, and I would encourage you to make the choice to go too far.
So many of us have been taught, and you mentioned something about confrontation fueling the enthusiasm, but many of us have been taught that confrontation is negative. What would you say to that?
Well, what I would say, Eric, is that everything in this universe has a positive and a negative context. It is possible that confrontation can be negative. It is also possible, which is now a shift in thinking for many of you, that confrontation can be positive. When I am confronting something, when I have an agreement, that is the healthiest thing that I can do. But me allowing a conversation to marinate in my head, or me allowing myself to have a conversation with somebody else about what's going on, but not truly confronting it head on, is not a healthy situation. When I absolutely know in that present moment what it means to move forward, if we are not moving forward, the instant, I said the instant, y'all, I'm not talking about the day after or a week later or even 5 minutes later, the instant that confrontation is needed is the moment that you need to confront. We have an acronym at Discover Leadership a training that's called TAN, capital TAN. It stands for Take Action Now. The best time to confront something that needs to be confronted in a healthy way is in the moment. When you have allowed yourself to allow it to marinate for a while, you now have some frustration, which can lead to some anger, which can lead to a very unhealthy confrontation, which means that it's likely not going to turn out in a positive way.
So I have absolutely set very clear expectations for someone in the past. And then when they were not delivering to that, I confronted it. And they definitely took it in a negative light.
Yeah, I mean, and it happens. And there's got to be an understanding that if I am not gaining agreements from the people in my life. Now, I want y'all to recognize that I slowed that down because I really want you to understand the importance of gaining an agreement to specific outcomes, to specific expectations, where there is understanding of the agreement. And when the time comes that somebody steps outside of the agreement, it's not going too far to confront that in the moment. It is the healthiest thing that you can do because you get to do that without negative emotion. You get to do that in the moment based upon an agreement. So you are managing a promise, an agreement, and not managing your expectations of the individual.
Okay, so what is the value then in the context of that conversation in going too far?
Well, the value is understanding that sometimes it feels so uncomfortable when we get out on that edge. And we talked about this so much. But when we're out on the edge, that's when it feels like we're about to go too far. Everything on the other side of that edge quite often are going to be things that we've not done before, things that we've not experienced before. So it feels like we're going too far. It feels uncomfortable. But y'all, you got to get this. That's the point. That's the emotion, the feeling, the experience that we really want you to have. Because that's when you are truly living. That is when you are truly off of the sidelines and in the game. That's when you are truly experiencing life in such a way that it is meaningful. So we're encouraging you to truly make the choice to get off of that sidelines, get in the game, and get out there on the edge.
So who determines, though, where that line is drawn? I mean, everybody has their own perspective of whatever the situation is. So who determines if I'm going too far or I'm not?
Well, ultimately, you're going to determine that because you're the person that are having that experience. And you can be having an experience with someone, and they may say to you, well, you know what? You went too far. What they did for you in that moment was they identified for you where their boundary is, where their edge is, and they are saying that you crossed it. Now, you don't get to tell somebody else whether or not you went too far or not, or you crossed their edge. It's their edge and it's their boundary. So if somebody communicates that to you, there is a great likelihood that you need to be positive in that moment. There's a good opportunity for you to respect their boundaries and respect their edge. If somebody identifies that for you and you keep moving forward, it could end up in a very unhealthy situation and possibly even a lawsuit. So I would encourage you, if somebody's identifying for you that you've gone too far, they're saying to you that you crossed their line, you crossed their edge, and I would encourage you to respect that.
Got it. So it's really dependent on the person and their capacity to kind of believe whether it's support or criticism.
Yeah, well, for me, in the context of this, Eric, I have 100% control over my edge. I have complete control over my conversation about what's too far. Now, if I am now including other people in this conversation, I have got to be willing to respect their boundaries. If somebody else tells me I went too far, that's a stop sign, because it is at that point that I have pushed beyond their boundaries, which is something that I've got to understand that I don't have a right to do without their permission. Even if I'm in a person with authority, I don't have a right to do that without their permission. So where we're talking about you going too far or not knowing what it means to go too far, we're talking about in the context of the things that you are doing in your own personal growth, in your relationships. How do you know what it means to go too far in being with people, loving people, how you treat people, unless you've gone too far? So I would encourage you that the focus of this should mainly be on your personal growth and your personal development, on your getting out on that edge, on your going too far in the context of who you are and how you're choosing to be with people.
Yeah, and our listeners out there are focused to synergistically come together as a team in their personal life and in their professional life. So what you're saying is turn it inwardly and really focus on going beyond what you believe is too far in those relationships.
Absolutely. I mean, there are absolutely no boundaries in the context of your personal growth and your personal development. And we've talked about this before, but let's reiterate it. This is an inside job. This is about controlling the one thing that you have 100% control over, yourself. And when you are willing to accept that level of personal responsibility, when you are willing to truly look in the mirror and evaluate what you're looking at based upon where you're going, not based upon where you've been, and you accept 100% personal responsibility to best your best, you're going to ultimately find that edge. And when you do, go too far. Break through that edge, break through that barrier, break through those boundaries, and take a step into the unknown, the places that you've not been before, and absolutely experience life in such a way that you feel like you're out on that edge, and stay out there.
Well, you heard it here first, y'all. Out on the Edge with Mike Jones. How will you ever know what it's like to go too far?
Unless you've gone too far.
Yes, too far.
So go too far. And when you go too far, you're going to find yourself out on that edge. Your palms are going to be sweating. Your heart's going to be racing. You're going to feel a little anxious. But when you get out there, embrace that, knowing that unless you're living your life out on the edge, you're taking us far.
Here we go now.